When Charlie abandoned his family for a life of luxury, he never expected his brother David to rise from the ashes and seek vengeance. Discover how far one man will go to reclaim his family's honor.
Charlie was the second son of Paul, a humble tailor in a small town. Growing up in a modest household, Charlie always felt the weight of his family's poverty. His father worked tirelessly to keep the family afloat, but Charlie longed for a life of luxury and status. As he graduated from college, he made a choice that would define his future: to pretend he was someone he was not. With a talent for embellishment, Charlie spun tales of wealth and success. He told his classmates that he came from a wealthy family and even fabricated stories about extravagant vacations and lavish parties. When he met and married a rich girl named Victoria, everyone believed his lies. He became the perfect embodiment of the success he had always craved. Charlie cut ties with his family, claiming to be an orphan. He moved into a luxurious home with Victoria, raising 2 children in an environment filled with opulence. Meanwhile, Paul continued to toil in his tailor shop, unaware of the betrayal brewing within his own family. Years passed, and through sheer determination, Paul's tailor shop gained popularity. He transformed it into a thriving business, earning respect and wealth in the community. However, Charlie remained oblivious to his father's success. He was too consumed by his own fabricated life. When Paul passed away unexpectedly, he left everything to Charlie in hopes that he would finally reconcile with him. The inheritance was substantial, a testament to Paul's hard work and dedication. Paul only left a small amount of money to David, his first son. Paul had always loved Charlie because he was his biological son, while David, his older son, was adopted. Paul did not care that David was the one who sacrificed his life working side by side with him all his life. As the sun set on the day of Paul's funeral, a heavy silence enveloped the family home. Charlie stood at the threshold, staring at the modest house that had once been his sanctuary. Memories flooded back, his father's gentle hands stitching fabric, his mother's laughter echoing through the rooms. But those memories felt distant, overshadowed by years of lies and denial. With the inheritance in hand, Charlie felt a rush of exhilaration mixed with guilt. He had always craved freedom from his past, and now he saw a chance to sever all ties completely. "This is my opportunity," he thought, justifying his decision to himself. "Finally, the old man had something to offer me. I have always deserved this." David, Paul's older son, was in stupor when the will was read. Paul had only left him and his mother with very little money and an old house, their first home. There was nothing left for them except to move out of their homes and hand it over to Charlie. Charlie was in a hurry to receive his inheritance, and he didn't mind that his mother had to go back living in their first home that was in terrible conditions. He gave them 1 week to hand over everything, and that is exactly what they did. As David and his mother packed their belongings to leave the family home, a heavy silence hung in the air. The once warm and inviting space felt cold and unwelcoming, stripped of its memories. David watched his mother, Margaret, her eyes filled with sorrow as she traced her fingers over the faded wallpaper, remnants of a life that had once been full of laughter and love. After moving into a modest apartment, David used the inheritance money he received from Paul's estate to provide his mother with a new home, hoping to offer her some comfort. But the new surroundings did little to lift Margaret's spirits. She felt betrayed, not just by Charlie but by Paul, who had left everything to Charlie without considering the emotional toll it would take on her and David. Days turned into weeks, and Margaret's sadness deepened into a profound depression. David watched helplessly as his mother slowly lost her grip on reality. She would sit for hours staring out the window, lost in thought, often forgetting to eat or take care of herself. The vibrant woman who had once filled their home with warmth was fading before his eyes. Desperate to help her, David reached out to Charlie. He sent message after message, pleading with him to visit their mother. "Charlie," he wrote one night, "Mom is not doing well. She needs you. Please come see her, she misses you." But each time he reached out, he was met with silence. Charlie was too engrossed in maintaining his perfect facade to care about the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, Victoria remained blissfully unaware of Charlie's past and family struggles. She continued to support Charlie's lavish lifestyle, unaware that beneath the surface lay a web of lies that could unravel at any moment. A year passed since Paul's death, and while David worked tirelessly to start a new business, a venture that began to take off, his mother's condition worsened. He poured every ounce of energy into his work, hoping that success would bring some stability back into their lives. But no amount of success could fill the void left by Charlie's betrayal. One fateful evening, after returning home from a long day at work, David found Margaret sitting in her chair, staring blankly at the wall. He knelt beside her and gently took her hand. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked softly. She looked at him with vacant eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I just want my Charlie back," she whispered, her voice barely audible. David's heart broke at her words. He felt the weight of their family's history pressing down on him, years of love overshadowed by betrayal and abandonment. "I know it hurts," he said gently, "but I'm here for you." Despite his reassurances, Margaret's health continued to decline. She became increasingly withdrawn, losing interest in everything she once loved. Her garden went untended, and her favorite books collected dust on the shelves. Tragically, just as David's business began to flourish, he received the call that would shatter his world. Margaret had passed away peacefully in her sleep. Overwhelmed with grief and anger, he sent a message to Charlie informing him of their mother's death. "Mom is gone," he wrote bitterly. "You didn't care enough to be there for her when she needed you most." But Charlie didn't respond. He chose to remain in his bubble of wealth and deception rather than confront the reality of what he had done. The day of Margaret's funeral arrived, a somber gathering filled with friends and family who came to pay their respects. David stood at the front of the small chapel, feeling an ache in his chest as he looked at the empty seat reserved for Charlie. It was a painful reminder of how far apart they had grown, not that they had ever been close, but his biological mother and father, and just abandoned them because they were poor. That was a hard pill to swallow. As friends shared stories about Margaret's kindness and strength, David felt a mix of pride and sorrow wash over him. His mother had touched so many lives despite the pain she endured in silence. Yet there was an emptiness where Charlie should have been, a brother who had chosen wealth over family. After the service concluded and guests began to leave, David stood alone by his mother's grave, tears streaming down his face. He silently cursed Charlie for abandoning them both when they needed him most. And just like that, he swore vengeance against Charlie. He was going to make him pay with what he most loved in the world, money. David laid out a meticulous plan, fueled by his desire for revenge against Charlie. He poured his energy into his business ventures, determined to rise above the ashes of his family's betrayal. As if by miracle, his hard work paid off. He struck a fortune, amassing wealth that eclipsed even what Paul had earned in his lifetime. With each success, David kept a watchful eye on Charlie, who had sunk deeper into debt due to his extravagant lifestyle and poor financial decisions. The contrast between their lives was stark. While David built an empire from the ground up, Charlie's world was crumbling around him. Seizing the opportunity, David began buying out Charlie's debts. He acquired Charlie's home, assets, and even Victoria's family estate, all under the guise of legitimate business transactions. With every purchase, David felt a sense of satisfaction. He was reclaiming what had been lost and punishing Charlie for his betrayal. When the debt collectors came knocking on Charlie's door, they executed David's rights with ruthless efficiency. Charlie was blindsided as he watched everything he had worked for slip away. The realization hit him hard. David was the one bankrupting him. Desperate and enraged, Charlie sought out David to confront him about the destruction of his life. But by then, it was too late. David had already left town, taking with him everything that once belonged to Charlie. Victoria, feeling manipulated and betrayed by her husband's lies about his past, filed for divorce shortly after realizing the extent of Charlie's financial ruin. As David settled into his new life with a burgeoning business and newfound wealth, he felt a bittersweet satisfaction. He had avenged their mother's suffering. Fast forward 3 years, and David found himself on vacation with Victoria and Charlie's children. Despite the complicated history between their families, he had grown fond of them and wanted to ensure they felt cared for and loved. During this time together, he decided it was time to right some wrongs. David returned all the property he had taken from Charlie back to Victoria and the children. After all, they were also his family, innocent victims. Meanwhile, Charlie had sunk back into the house where he grew up, a stark reminder of his past failures. The once proud man now lived in shadows, telling stories of trips and luxuries to anyone who would listen. But those tales fell on deaf ears. No one cared about the hollow echoes of a life built on lies.